Hi guys, my name is Ludi and this is my husband Luis, and we are so excited that you decided to stop by Reconnected Love.
Make sure to hit the like and subscribe buttons so you can be notified every time a new video drops.
We pray that these stories bless and encourage you on your journey as you wait. And don't forget to share them with a friend. See you soon!
Hi family, I am so excited for the next couple you guys are about to hear. This is the Jean-Francois, and their story is literally reconnected love. They've known each other since they were in third grade. Let's just say there's gonna be a teenage pregnancy. Somebody else marries somebody else. Somehow God brings them together. This is only part one, but you gotta make sure you come back for part two as well, because like I said, you can even imagine the fullness of their story. So grab some popcorn, grab a notebook, and get ready for this one.
My name is Edwin, and this is my wife, Wendy, and this is our reconnected love story.
My first question for you guys, who were you before you met each other?
Who was I before we met each other? That's not an easy answer, and it's because we met each other in elementary school, third grade. So who was I? I was a third grader running around, living my best life, no cares in the world, just literally running around and having fun. Like, I lived to have fun. So that's who I was at the time that I met. However, we met in third grade, but I mean, I didn't have any interest in her. I think she was stalking me, low key.
Not then.
She was stalking me.
The stalking came a lot later.
She's been stalking me since third grade. If you want my version of the story, she's been stalking me since third grade. Back then, I didn't have any interest in her or, really girls at that point. Again, I just lived to have fun. So that's who I was at the time we initially met. Fast forward to the time when we started dating, who was I? I was starting college at the time that we were dating. I just came back from boot camp for the Marine Corps. So I was young, extremely energetic, and I was literally ready to take over the world. The simple way I would explain myself would be, I was very young. I had a lot of goals, dreams, and ambitions. And I was ready to take on the world. Ready to not take on the world, I was ready to conquer the world. At that time, I viewed the world as my oyster, and I'm going after things I wanted in life. So that's what I was.
Who I was before we got together or started dating.
A stalker.
I wasn't a stalker yet.
Okay.
So we met in third grade. We were in the same third grade class at Miami Shores Elementary School. And one of the memories that I still have to this day that, Edwin, you will continue to deny is fifth grade graduation. We're seated alphabetically, and you and the person next to you who were sitting next to me were just bothering me. So you guys were typical fifth grade boys. After that point, we went to middle school together, where again, we shared some classes and we had a lot of mutual friends. And then we went to different high schools. And we reconnected, I want to say right after high school, shortly after high school graduation, around the time that we started college. We went to college together as well. And who I was at that time was just very carefree, enjoying life with my friends, enjoying the newfound freedom of being in college, hanging out with my sister. Again, we have a lot of mutual friends in common. So I think we were both at a place of just being curious, and I think when we reconnected and we saw each other again, there was an attraction there. But because we had mutual friends, we were able to hang out in a group as opposed to immediately started dating just one-on-one. So I think that's who we were right before we started dating.
And just to throw a little more details into that. So yeah, went to the same elementary school, same middle school, didn't see each other for 4 years, and then saw each other in college through a mutual friend of ours that we had from elementary school, which is weird, right?
Your best friend at the time was Mike, and he lived a couple houses away from me. So we were both really close with this one friend.
Actually, I think that's a common theme we ended up realizing after we really got together, like there's a lot of thin threads that kept us, that connected us to each other, right? So that mutual friend of mine, again, he was a good friend in elementary school and middle school, but in high school, or my senior year in high school, me and him reconnected because him and I went to 2 different high schools, and we became really, really tight. And then through that, not realizing that he was really, really tight with Wendy because they lived on the same block. So it wasn't until college when actually I went over his house when he was cutting my hair. He was cutting my hair, and then she came in, and I was like, oh, I remember her. But again, last time I saw her was middle school. I didn't really have any interest in her, but I was like, whoa, okay, what's going on, Wendy? How's everything? Yeah. So yeah, there was that attraction after X amount of years of not seeing each other.
And then just taking it back to that theme of people and situations connecting us. Before, Edwin is from New York, so he moved to Miami when we were in the 3rd grade. But before that, he has a relative, his sister, who had one of the few Haitian-owned beauty salons in Miami at the time that my mom had been going to long before I was even born. So there was already a lot of different family connections between us as well.
So,
and that sister of his, your oldest sister, is my niece's godmother. So there's a lot of again, just family connections, which now in hindsight we realize, maybe at the time we thought it was all coincidental, but now we realize that it wasn't a coincidence.
Well, we didn't know it at the time, right? So like when I moved to Miami, right, my half sister, she already had her beauty salon, and her mom was going there all the time. So at the time I came into Miami, her mom and my half sister knew each other, and they already had a relationship. But the whole entire time of middle school and high school middle school and elementary school that we shared, we didn't know that my half sister and her mom
that our
were tight.
families were tight, yeah.
And then through me going to my half sister's shop, quite often, I knew all of the staff that she worked with. And there was her sister-in-law. Her name is Regine. Me and her were really tight. And I never knew that Regine ended up marrying her brother. So I was always cool with Regine, not knowing that Regine's, kid and Regine's husband were her niece and her brother. So again, all of that was happening in the background, but we just didn't know. We didn't find out about it till many, many years later.
So that's everything before we even started dating.
Yeah, pretty much.
Yep.
Pretty much, yeah.
That is a lot. In case you guys ever wondered if God put it together, I think he made it very clear
Absolutely.
that he was definitely in the midst of it. But since you guys started dating in college, it seems like you guys did a lot of growing up together that kind of happened. So talk to us about your relationship and that time.
So our dating phase was, I would say, short-lived. And I'll speak from my perspective, right? So we reconnected, and we went, all of high school, several years not seeing each other. We reconnected in college. There was that immediate attraction. So we started dating. And early on within the dating, I don't know, maybe within the first 2 to 3 months, I honestly started feeling like, oh, wow, I can really see myself with this person, right? I can really see myself with her. I can literally see myself getting married to her. Because we had a really good, as girlfriend and boyfriend, we had a really, really good relationship, right? So that did 2 things. One, it was like, okay, yeah, I can see myself having a future with her. But then I also thought to myself, I'm not ready to get married at this point, right? So it's like, whoa, I'm 19 years old. I got to conquer the world. Marriage comes after I've conquered the world. In my mind, I had my life already, laid out. So in my mind, I'm like, okay, yeah, what I'm feeling, I realized, I recognized what I was feeling, but I was like, I shouldn't be having this feeling now. I should be having this feeling, when I'm 25, 26, once I've got certain accomplishments underneath my belt. So yeah, I mean, is there a way to put this on pause? I honestly, that's really the way I thought. I'm like, how can I take this relationship and just kind of put it on pause and then come back to it later?
Press play later.
Yeah, like literally, seriously, that's what I thought. I was like, yeah, this is a great relationship. But yeah, I'm not ready to settle down and get married. And if we continue down the path that we're on, if we continue dating, that's exactly what's going to happen. So that's what my mindset was when we were dating. Like very early on in that relationship, I recognized, wow, like I can really see myself very long term.
And I could say that I felt the same way. It was, my relationship with Edwin was probably the first real relationship that I had in terms of the emotions that I was experiencing, the different things we were experiencing. We went on our first date to McDonald's. You remember that? First date was at McDonald's, and then the movies. Okay, the movies, and then
it wasn't the first date to McDonald's because you keep saying that. The first date was we were going to the movies,
and then we had dinner at McDonald's
and
first.
we happened to eat at McDonald's during that first date. But the first date wasn't McDonald's; it was the movies.
Okay, I stand corrected.
Yes.
But so we started dating at 19. We were both in college, and again, for me, it was a lot of firsts, a lot of the first time feeling this way, a lot of having someone come to my house, my parents' house, pick me up, take me out. Breaking curfews, getting in trouble. But it was just, it felt so natural. It felt like this is who I was supposed to be with. And then again, going back to those connections that we had with a lot of mutual friends, our mutual friends would often refer to us, I don't know if you remember this, as the Haitian Huxtables, referencing, the Cosby Show and this power couple type of situation. So even among our friend group, the connection and the chemistry, they would often talk about that. But I remember there was one day I was hanging out at your house, and I think I told you this, and your dad came over, and he would often come and ask me questions about school and ask me different things. And one day he asked me, "Are you going to marry my son?" And I was kind of taken aback because we were, again, 19 years old. I don't think marriage was on either of our minds, but it just made me feel like if the answer was yes, I would have had their approval. That's how I felt in my heart. But again, just starting college and again, exploring so many new different things, I don't think marriage was at the forefront of either of our minds. And it was just a really, really good time in terms of the love that we shared, the experiences that we had, the fun that we had. It was very pure and very, it was just so easy to be around you and to just spend that time with you. But something that you said that you had thought about, which was you wish you could put it on pause and then we, press play in the future. That's actually exactly what happened between us. So, yeah.
God is good, right?
Absolutely.
I just want to add my perspective on our relationship back then. So, that relationship, it was very easygoing, but it was like there was no fronts put up. For me personally, I have like when I talk to other people or younger men about relationships, right? I always warn them about that puppy love stage, right? And my definition of the puppy love stage is within the first 8 to 9 months, neither person can do anything wrong, right? Because it's like you're putting on your best, outfits, you're putting your best foot forward to try to impress the other person, right? And vice versa, they're trying to do the same thing to you. So you're not really seeing the real person, right? Till about like 9 months in, that's when, all right, boom, I already got them in the bag and now you can kind of be yourself. And then that's when you start picking up, oh, wait a minute, I didn't notice this trait, I didn't notice that trait. But with us, I felt at the time there wasn't a real puppy love phase, right? I think it was just, all right, you were just being you, mm-hmm. and you weren't trying to put on any type of facade or trying to show out. It was like, all right, this is me, this is who I am, accept it, and vice versa. I think I was doing the same at that time. It was like, hey, this is me, take it or leave it. And having that and still being able to have the relationship like how we had it, it was just, again, very, very easy going. And things just, we dated for like, 9 months, I think, 12 months, something like that. And yeah, it was good. It was good from the beginning.
I think that authentic part of our relationship that you're talking about is because we already knew each other. It's not like we had met each other and had to develop a friendship and develop this and put on this front or that facade. even though we had lost touch in our high school years, I already knew who you were from elementary school. I remembered who you were in middle school and vice versa.
That's what
And then
I
I didn't stalk you then, babe. Remember, I started stalking you when we were in college. But anyhow, it worked clearly. Hello. But as far as that being real, there was so much between us already in terms of history. It would not have made sense to try to put on a front, because I already knew who you were. You already knew who I was. Yes, we were maybe older versions of ourselves, but in the end, I think I already knew who you were at your core and vice versa.
So you guys had a pause.
So yeah, pause. So
an extended
what happened
pause.
is again we dated for I don't remember.
Like a year.
Yeah, let's just call it a year, right? Because there's a lot of things we can't really place timelines on because we just didn't keep track of it, right? And again, that's kind of like been the common theme of our relationship, is like we just went with the flow. We didn't try to time certain things. So we dated for about a year, and then we broke up, right? But before we broke up, we broke up and then we found out she was pregnant. We broke up and we found out she was pregnant. Why did we break up? Honestly, my perspective, and this is just me being 100, that was part of the, I'm getting in too deep. Like, we really need to put this on pause because this is not, like, no, I'm not supposed to get married now. I'm 19. Like, I still have to conquer the world, right? I still have a lot of things that I want to do. And this is supposed to happen at 25, 26, 27, or, later. So, yeah, we broke up, and it wasn't because the relationship wasn't good, right? It wasn't like anything was wrong with our relationship. If I recall correctly, I've never been the one to believe in long-term relationships, and one of my goals at that time was to go to FSU. And I can't remember where you wanted to go, but you wanted to go someplace else, right? Out of state, if I'm not mistaken.
Out of Miami, not out of state.
Okay, well, she wanted to go to, we were both in college at the time at FIU, but I know I shortly wanted to get out of Miami and go to FSU. You wanted to go someplace else. I can't remember where. So, on that, it's like, okay, well, I firmly I've never been the one who, really believe in long distance relationships. So in my mind, I was like, all right, well, let's just call it quits now, right? So we broke up. And then like 2 months or a month and a half later, 2 months later, she came back and was like, hey, got something to tell you. I'm pregnant. And me being young and dumb back then, and very, let's just say young and dumb, right? Mm-hmm. I'm like, whoa, what you mean you're pregnant? Oh, excuse me. Not only was she pregnant, but she was 3 months pregnant, right?
I was 4 months pregnant.
Oh, I always thought it was 3 months. So for me, that was even more concerning and upsetting, because I'm like, how, at that time, again, I was thinking it was 3 months. How are you 3 months pregnant? And you just now telling me, like, how did you not know you were pregnant? Like,
never been pregnant before.
Physically, when you were pregnant, again, me being in that time frame and just not, giving any type of, so going back to the original question, right, where it's like, who was I before we got together? That younger version of me, I always viewed the world through my lens, right? Meaning, if everyone should think the same way I think, and if you don't think if your logic isn't the same as my logic, something's wrong with you, right? And I never, cared to think from someone else's perspective, right? So it's like, I'm a logical person, I'm a logical person, and most people should be logical. So you should be thinking kind of like the same thing as me. So in my mind, I'm like, if I'm a girl and I missed my period, I'm pregnant, I should know. I shouldn't know by month 4 or month 3. I should know by month 1, right? So I should have, been doing something. I was like, okay, did she set me up? Did she try to plan this? Like, what's going on? So I started thinking all types of ulterior motives. And honestly, I was really, really upset that you were, again, in my opinion, 3 months pregnant and didn't know till that time frame. And I'm like, oh man, nah, this is
set up.
This is set up. And then, again, it kind of played back into my view of, I'm not supposed to have a kid now. I'm supposed to have a kid when I'm in my late 20s. I got conquering to do, so this is kind of throwing a monkey wrench, and that upsetted me. So I'm gonna be honest, that was my perspective of what happened. So I say all of that to say we broke up and then find out she was pregnant and we had a kid. I don't know if you want to add in anything on that.
So unbeknownst to me, because I had never been a parent before, there were things medically that I just didn't know were happening in my body. So when I went to the doctor for a checkup, and, the doctor's casually asking me questions, how's your diet? How's this? How's that? Have you ever had this? Have you recently experienced that? Do you hope to be a mother someday? Oh yeah? Okay, well, congratulations. You are one. And I'm shocked. And he goes into another room. The doctor comes back in. The doctor goes into another room, comes back in, and starts using this instrument over my stomach. And he asks me, not to talk. And he asked me to listen. And so I just hear all of this static. And, after a while, I start hearing what I now know was a heartbeat. And he proceeds to tell me that not only am I expecting, but I'm between 3 and 4 months pregnant. So at this point, I don't know what I experienced. Probably a whole bunch of different emotions between fear, excitement, being nervous, being afraid, because we're not together. And both of us being raised in very traditional Haitian families, I was terrified of what my family would say. I was terrified of what his family would say. I wasn't as afraid of what Edwin would say because of the fact that we had such a strong love connection. I guess in my mind, I just thought happily ever after would happen, but that was the total opposite at that time. So after sharing the news with Edwin and him reacting the way that he did, how he just described, it was clear that the road ahead was not going to be paved with rainbows and puppies. Again, just coming from very traditional, very old school Haitian families, immediately this family meeting was planned. Our parents are talking about the wedding date and this date and that date, and we're kind of like, we're 20 years old. We're like in our second year of college at this point, and that was not what either of us were expecting. But it felt like at that moment, we weren't going to be given the choice. Our parents were expecting us to do exactly what they were planning, but it was clear that Edwin was not about to have that happen.
Yeah, we had two different perspectives on that one.
And seeing Edwin's reaction, it just kind of, things just took a different turn. So,
adding on to that, when she told me she was pregnant, again, part of my reaction, I reacted the way I reacted because, again, in my mind, I'm like, wait a minute, no, this is not falling in line with, I understood what being a parent was at that young of an age, and I'm like, no, at 20 years old, I'm not supposed to have my first kid. Again, I've got too much planned for me to stop that and have a kid. So that was part of my reaction. But then, as Wendy said, with the parents, and a lot of it was being driven by her parents, I vividly remember this because for me, that was like a defining moment. I didn't fear what my parents thought. I didn't fear what her parents thought because honestly, I didn't care. I had my own plans and I was very dogmatic about that. But I vividly remember coming home from work one day, and when I get there, my half-sister, who's very close to Wendy's mom, she's there with her, with my brother-in-law. My parents were there, Wendy and her parents were there, and I think one or two of your brothers. And I remember...
it was a family meeting.
Yeah, it was a family meeting, right? That one, I never knew was happening. Two, I felt ambushed because I'm coming home and all these people in the house, and as I'm walking in, I hear the topic at hand. And the topic at hand is so they're getting married. And at that time, no, you're not telling me what I'm going to do. So just the mere fact that you're telling me what you think I'm going to do, heck no, it's not happening. We're going to fight, basically. We're going to fight. So it was like, what? This is the topic? Nah, not happening. And because you guys are trying to make me do this, I'm definitely not doing it. Even if I wanted to, I'm like, because now
you're saying
because you're telling me to do it. No, you don't tell me what to do. Who are you? So my mindset from that moment on was like, nope, marriage is not on the table at all, right? Marriage is not on the table at all. we're just gonna figure it out. You know, we'll co-parent, but no, marriage is not on the table. Again, not because I didn't love her, I didn't like the relationship, but at that moment when I saw that, no. And I really remember, I think it was Bobby, one of her older brothers, you know, he was giving me that look, you know, protective brother. I get it. Again, I completely get it. But, you know, he's looking me up and down like, man, I want to beat this dude up. And I'm like, hey, it's me against the world at this point. I'm ready to fight. Look, y'all can sit here and plan this supposedly wedding. Y'all gonna spend y'all money, because when the wedding day comes and I'm not there, you know, that's on y'all. I never co-signed on any of this. I'm not agreeing to this. I'm out. And I literally began to walk out. I remember trying to walk out, and I don't know if it was my half sister or my mom, but somebody was trying to pull me back into the conversation, right, at hand. And I was like, no, I'm not sitting here. I'm not discussing this at all, because I didn't co-sign on this, and y'all ambushing me. How am I gonna come home from work and this is what I'm walking into? So yeah, that one scenario of, you know, parents trying to force their kids to do something, yeah, it didn't sit well with me at all. So, and that ended up playing into a lot of things that ended up happening afterwards.
So all I can say is thank God that we did not follow the advice of our parents, who were definitely in their mind acting in what they thought was our best interest. But in hindsight, we both realized, and we say it all the time, if we would have gotten married at 20, now where we are in life, we would not still be together. We needed that time apart to really grow up, to really find ourselves, to really conquer the world, as you say, and really find out who we were. Although we maintained a good co-parenting relationship for Trey's sake, we needed that time apart to really grow up. I mean, for lack of a better word. A year after Trey was born, 9/11 happened, and you being in the Marine Corps, that meant you were going to combat. And I'll never forget, there was a day that you called me. I had come home from church, and you called me, you must have called me, and said to meet you, or ask you to meet you at this park. I don't know if you remember that.
I remember that.
And as soon as we got off the phone, I was with my sister-in-law, and I remember I started crying. Trey was a baby, and I said, Edwin's going to war. And oh my gosh, it's making me emotional now. But I remember going to meet you there, and don't look at me because it's really making me emotional. Stop, no, it's really making me cry. I remember thinking that we wouldn't have the chance to have the life that we knew we were destined for, because I just immediately thought the worst. I thought you were going to go to war and I was never going to see you again, and Trey would never get to know who his awesome dad was. And praise God that didn't happen. You went to combat, came home safely, and went to combat and came home safely, and went to combat and came home safely. And again, I think that experience of you going to combat and that fear of me or us never, the fear that I had that we would never get to have that life that we both knew so much that we were gonna have at 19, it was scary, it was humbling. It really helped me to put things in perspective in terms of, you know, how we were conducting ourselves as parents. Because we had a lot of rough patches as parents, as co-parents. And again, we just really needed that time to grow up. And when we did get back together, it was so much more meaningful to me, because I knew what was at risk all those times that you went to combat. And so for me, it just made me not want to take you for granted, because at any given moment as a service member, at any given moment could be that last chance or that last time that I see you. And that was really the lens that I was looking at us through when we did reconnect all those years later.
So my take on it is slightly different. So whereas you see, or your perspective is, it's a good thing we didn't get married at that time because we needed the time to grow up, right? I believe slightly different. I kind of believe in that, but from a different perspective, right? In the sense that I think if we had gotten married at that time, yeah, we may or may not have been together, but I think the dynamics of our relationship would have changed in the sense that we wouldn't. I think it would have been it would have been good at first, right? But because of for who I was at that time frame, there would have been things that I would not have experienced because I would have foregone. I would have to sacrifice the things that I wanted at that time to be in a marriage and raising Trey, right? So I wouldn't have learned certain things and I wouldn't have matured because I would have given this path up to be on this path. So in this path, I would have seen it as, okay, yeah, it would have been good, but I don't think it would have been as good as it is now because that time frame allowed me to learn, gain experiences, and develop a different perspective than I had if I had taken this path of marrying you at such a young age. I think if I had stayed on that path, I would have been I wouldn't have grown as quickly down that path as I did choosing the path of us not being together, if that makes sense. What you saw, and this is hindsight, me 2020 looking back at it, at the time I viewed it as we had a conversation and I remember you saying, yeah, you don't want to get married either. And I'm like, okay, cool, we're in agreement, so we're going to do this whole co-parenting thing. So going back to that meeting of the families discussing our wedding, I'm like, wait a minute, because you were there. And I'm like, whoa, you're siding with them? I thought we agreed that we're not getting married. So the anger that I had towards, you're trying to force me to do something I don't want to do, that's not happening. So we're fighting on this regard. But the fact that I saw you on that side, I viewed it as, oh, okay, so it's literally me against the world because I'm fighting you too. You told me one thing, now you're flipping the script, so no. And
wait, let me just interject. Yeah. What you saw was the Haitian parents picked me up.
I know.
And said, oh, we're going to a meeting. What kind of meeting? You're just going to go to this meeting and you're going to find out at the meeting what the meeting is about. Okay, and then we pull up at your house. So that's what you saw.
I realized that many, many years later. But again, the young and dumb version of me at that time frame was like, I didn't see it from that perspective. Yeah. I just saw it from my perspective. Like, wait a minute, we literally just have a conversation and now you're part of it. So, it made me want to fight you as well. And I realized that being older and looking back, I realized that how forceful I was at me feeling like I'm fighting everyone, that might have given you the impression, it did give you the impression that I was rejecting you as well, right? And for me at that time, it wasn't so much rejecting you, it was more me being selfish. I'm gonna be honest, right? I can be honest. Me being selfish to the point where it's like, no, like I'm thinking for me. I'm thinking of what I want and what I'm going after in life, and y'all are trying to point me in a direction that I don't want to go in. So it was more about rebelling against feeling forced or pigeonholed towards a decision or a path in life, as opposed to rejecting you per se, if that makes sense. So yeah, long story short, we didn't get married, obviously, right? And that caused a lot of tension between you and I. We went from having this great relationship to being parents to me being honest, like I hated you for a while, right? Like I really hated you for a while because
wow.
Yeah, and the hate came from me not having the wisdom at such a young age to think of things from her perspective. Again, I was just looking at things from my perspective and I'm like, okay, why is she acting like this? And I felt you may not have been doing it, but at the time I felt you were intentionally doing things to piss me off, right? Like I remember, because we were going to school, we were both working at the time, right? And I still had the Marine Corps. And I remember like there were certain days that I would have Trey. And those days, for whatever reason, you just switch it up and not tell me. Like I would try to go pick him up and your mom will tell me something different, or, you know, whatever it was. And I'm like, okay, she's trying to keep me from, you know, from spending time with my son. Like what's your angle? Like I always view, at that time I was way more skeptical of everything than I am now, right? So I always viewed it as negative intentions on your part. Like if something didn't go right, I'm like, oh my gosh, all right, baby mama drama and stuff like that. Again, you may or may not have been doing it intentionally, but the way I viewed it was you're trying to keep me from my son, or, you know, there's always some type of drama going on. And there was the unresolved feelings and emotions that were never talked about, still stemming from that big blow up of, you know, us not getting married and how your parents felt about it and how you truly felt about it and how I truly felt about it. So to me, I just all balled up, or I wrapped everything up into hatred for you about that. Because I'm like, okay, well, you're the driving force for it. Because I looked at it as you're the representative of your family and everything, and I'm the representative of my family and everything. And the conversations I had, I pulled my parents aside after that night, and I'm like I went at them like, yo, what is this? Why y'all came at me like this? Why was it all set up the way it was? And, you know, my parents sat me down and like, listen, it was like they had a real conversation with me, like, hey, you need to understand the severity of the situation in the sense that y'all having a kid, so you need to like wise up and smarten up as to how this is really gonna go down. But we're not trying to force you. Understand that there is another family, and think about it. If it was your sister, we would probably do the same thing with whoever got her pregnant. And when I heard that and I saw it, I'm like, okay, I can understand that standpoint a little bit. Like, you know, it kind of like softened my approach when my parents told me that. But I was still mad that the situation played out the way it did. And having that long drawn out conversation with my parents, it let me realize that they weren't trying to force me to do something I didn't want to do. That's what it looked at the time. But they were trying to, my dad was a politician, right? He was a politician in Haiti. So he was I call him a career politician. Not that he was a politician for all his career, but he knew how to play politics. So in his point of view, hey, I'm not trying to force my son to get married, but I need to make sure that I'm not offending these people. I need to appease these people in a certain way because I sympathize and I understand their situation. And at the same time, I need to see what's going on here with my family and see what's the best way to do it. So in his mind, having that meeting was just trying to appease both sides and see where he can steer it. Not necessarily trying to force me to do something. But again,
that's what it felt like. Yeah,
that's what it felt like. So that's where the hatred, you know, like I was like, oh man, I hate this girl. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like for a good 5 or 6 months.
Wow.
I was like, I hate this girl.
Thank God for change.
Thank God for change. So during that time frame of us breaking up, I had another relationship that ended up developing into a long-term relationship. You got into another relationship, and you actually got married from that relationship. And actually you got married and you had a daughter, right? You had Cameron. So at the time that I got deployed, I was already, again, at the time I was going to Iraq for the first time. I remember having that conversation with you, and in my mind I was thinking, all right, at that time I didn't like it. Like I was like, oh man,
that was part of that 5 to 6 months when you hated me?
Yeah, okay. It was part of the, oh man, baby mama drama. Like I just had negative views of you about that, right? I really did, I'm not gonna lie. But that experience or that event of saying, hey, you're going, right? It made me wise up and say, okay, put my differences aside. I needed to tell you, but I was willing to let go of whatever negative feelings I had. So I was like, let's have this conversation. And when we did have the conversation, something that I did, because part of me hating you is I felt that you hated me, right? So again, I'm that type of person, like, for the majority of my life, I've been the type of person, like, I'm a mirror to whoever I'm around, right? So if you show me love, I'm gonna show you love 10 times. You show me hate, I'm gonna show you hate 10 times. Like, I'm gonna, multiply whatever you shoot my way. So I felt like I was getting a lot of hate. So I was like, all right, so I'm gonna portray that back. So when we had that conversation, something that I was very, very surprised and shocked at was your reaction, because I really felt like I felt like the conversation was gonna play out like,
we're gonna duke it out?
No, we're gonna duke it out, but not have a lot of warm and fuzzy emotions from you.
Okay.
It was just gonna be like, okay, me telling you this is what this is where my future is taking me, right? Or this is what my future is gonna be, and you being like, okay, yeah, all right, cool, thanks for letting me know, and okay, what are we gonna do about Trey? And that was it. Like, I didn't expect for you to have an emotional reaction, and it wasn't like your reaction was like, oh my God, don't go. But I sensed and I could feel that, oh wow, like she does still have some type of feelings for me. So that was very, very surprising. I didn't expect that. And that helped to soften and change my perspective from that point moving forward, right? So, and Trey was 3 at the time. He wasn't 1. He was 3. So at that time frame, it was like, okay, the first 3 years of Trey's life, actually it might have been longer than that, than 6 to 8 months. It might have been longer. But in my mind, I remember after that meeting, it was like, okay, I need to change the way I view you, and our relationship needs to change. So I felt like we were just two people that hate each other, baby mama drama, baby daddy drama, and we have a kid together. And then after that, or that experience of me having to leave, and then me coming back, my mindset was more along the lines of co-parenting. Like, yeah, let's really put my personal differences aside, pull my emotions aside. Let's do what's right for our son. And I think my perspective is from 2003, after that, that's when we were able to speak like friends and really co-parent. I believe from the time Trey was born till 2000, till that time we had that talk, we weren't really co-parenting.
We were just going through the motions.
We were just going through the motions, exactly. So I
miserably going through the motions.
Yeah, exactly.
Because it wasn't pleasant for either of us.
So I believe, I believe that conversation. I believe me going to Iraq the first time helped drive a better communication and relationship with us not being together, but co-parenting.
I agree. I think that, again, just that fear of the unknown, that fear of you going to war and what that would look like, and would I be able to communicate with you, and will Trey be able to communicate with you, and if you got injured, if you, or worse, all of those feelings, probably on both sides, from both of us, just kind of helped, or at least for me, it helped me to understand.
Not that I didn't have feelings, but I didn't have feelings of fear and.
Well, you're a Marine. You're a Marine. But for me, those feelings of the what ifs, but all of the negative what ifs were enough to help me kind of reframe how we need to be as co-parents. And as far as the hate that you thought that I had for you, it wasn't hate. There was definitely a lot of resentment, because again, in my perspective, my reality was I am a young single mom who's not married in a Haitian household with very old-fashioned parents with very old-fashioned standards. The relationship with my dad, which was very, very close before getting pregnant with Trey, was completely severed, to the point where we were living in the same home, and the most we would say was good morning or good evening. And that was basically it. There was no conversation. He was a beautiful grandfather, and to this day still is to Trey. But to me, there was a lot of, I guess what you thought I was giving you, I felt I was getting from my father. which was not necessarily hatred, because I know my dad would never hate me, but he did at one point say, do not use my last name. You are no longer, a Joseph, my maiden name. And he disowned me, for lack of a better word. Eventually, we got to the point of being on speaking terms, which was the good mornings and the good evenings. But there was a lot of tension in my household because of the fact that we did not go through with the plan at hand, which at the time was, y'all need to be married. If you're going to have a child together, you need to be married. So those feelings that I was getting from my dad did drive me to try to appease him. And so when I entered another relationship, and the guy I was with at the time, we dated for a while, and he showed interest in being married, I thought, well, I don't really want to, but this will satisfy my dad, because now I'm not just a young single mom. Yes, I have Trey with you, but at least now I'm married to someone, not to Edwin, but at least if I'm married to someone, that will make me and my dad's relationship a lot better. And I remember, again, we had gotten to a better place as co-parents, and then I broke the news to you that I was going to be moving away to New Orleans. And that did not go over very well, and it probably extended that 6 to 8 month hatred that you had for me into...
It didn't extend it, it brought back those feelings.
It just kind of renewed that whole set of feelings that you had for me. But at the time, I thought I was doing what was best for Trey. I thought I was doing, which was raising him in a house, although not with his father, but raising him in a house with someone that I was married to. And I felt that that would restore my relationship with my dad. So definitely in hindsight, and I've recognized this, many, many years ago, I got married for all the wrong reasons. And again, thank God for his divine intervention in helping to orchestrate things the way that he did. I didn't realize it at the time, but God knew the plan that he had for me. He knew the plans that he had for us. And me using a marriage to satisfy my dad, or to satisfy anyone else for that matter, was it was very immature and not the right decision. But in my mind at the time, I was doing what was best for Trey and then for myself. So fast forward, I dated someone. We were in a long-term relationship. Edwin was in a long-term relationship. The person I was in a long-term relationship with, I ended up getting married to for just under 5 years. And again, all of the sequence of events that transpired, it was unhealthy, it was toxic. There was adultery. There was just a lot of just signs showing me that I am not supposed to be with this person. And all the while, we're still co-parenting because we still have Trey. At this point, Trey's getting older. Trey's like in kindergarten at this point, where I'm sending report cards and we're talking about doctor's visits. Our co-parenting relationship got better. Meanwhile, I'm in this marriage, and I'll never forget the first letter I wrote to you while you were in Iraq, immediately after getting married. I don't know if you remember this, but I wrote it with a code. Do you remember that? I wrote it in code, and the code said, I got married and I regret it already.
Didn't see that.
And I still have that letter.
Oh yeah, I didn't see that. But
wait, and so
hold on, before you go, because I don't want to forget this. So I guess something to mention, because you literally just triggered a memory, is when we were dating, we used to write each other letters. And that was like our communicate. Like that was a really good form of communication for us, because in our letters is where we would really, like in person, we would display our feelings, but we wouldn't talk about it. And I think that was part of the easygoing of our relationship, because everything just flowed naturally. But it's not like I tried to, sauce her up. It's not like, I was trying to mac her down or anything like that. No, because we connected very, very well, very easygoing. And then when it came time to sharing our feelings,
we did that in writing.
We did that in writing. We would just write each other love letters, right? I wouldn't even say love letters. It's just like, hey, these are my thoughts that I'm thinking about right now. And our emotions will come out. And then together in that relationship, we would just physically display those emotions. So, loving, kissing, and all that stuff. So fast forward when I got the letter, I'm not gonna call it love letter. When I got the letter, it kind of rekindled that in my mind, right? But I did not pick up on the code.
I still have that letter. I'll show it to you.
Wait, how do you have that letter if you sent it to me?
Because I think you showed it to me when you got back.
No.
But something that you just reminded me of was those letters, which eventually became emails. Do you remember? Mm-hmm. Eventually, I think by your last deployment to Iraq. Gosh. Which became, I'm going to say that the military gave you access to email finally. It's okay, we're not dating ourselves. But anyway, those love letters, which I still have the handwritten letters, in your last deployment, you had access to email. And I have every single one of those emails that we exchange where we're talking about, Trey's different appointments and how he's doing in school and how he's adjusting and from
the last one, because by that time we started, I guess, reconnect. Yeah, that's when we started reconnecting
for sure. We started reconnecting.
That's the third deployment.
Your last deployment. But by that point, by your third deployment, I remember praying to God. I was already in the process of being divorced. I recognized and I had prayed, and I believed that because of the situation that was at hand at the time, it was just not a healthy place for me, and it was certainly not something that God had wanted for me. And because of the circumstances of what the person I was married to had been doing, I was freed from that marriage. And I remember, just because of our co-parenting and still being connected to you, praying to God, like, if Edwin is not supposed to be in my life as anything more than just Trey's dad, help me to rid myself of these feelings for him, because I knew what I was feeling in my heart after a certain point. And after a certain point, it went from co-parenting, because while I was married, it was just co-parenting. And after my marriage had ended, I could feel myself getting to a point where feelings were starting to come back to me, because I always felt we had unfinished business on some level. And I remember praying to God and just saying, take these feelings away from me. I don't want to feel these emotional feelings for you if you are not supposed to be in my life in that way. Of course, we're going to co-parent and we're going to maintain a relationship, a platonic relationship for Trey's sake, which I think we did a really, really, really good job of doing. But for me, I was starting to go down a different path, and I didn't want it to go there, because if it was not of God, I just didn't want it. And I used to pray consistently, get this guy, like, Lord, take these feelings away from me. I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel this. I don't want to feel this. And the feelings just didn't go away. If anything, they just kept getting stronger. And it was when you were going to your last deployment to Iraq, and you went to California first, and you tricked me into coming to California.
I did not trick you. You were being a helicopter mom.
As I could be sometimes.
I can use that as a way of you
that's
stalking me.
That's how I stalked you? No, that's not what I stalked you.
Another method of you stalking me.
Let's talk about the stalking. Let's just go back there for just a moment, okay? I can admit that we had a group of mutual friends, some of whom also had a connection, or they had their own connections. So we would go on group dates from time to time.
We would.
And then sometimes we would go out separately. You and the guys would go over here while me and the girls would go over there. And
you and the girls would
and sometimes we would
me and the guys were
coincidentally end up at the same Miami subs where you guys were hanging out for the night.
Not coincidentally.
Or we would coincidentally end up at the same exact location on the beach where you guys were hanging out.
So here's what I'm going to
And then sometimes,
here's the details I'm going to add to that.
Wait. And then sometimes when you would say, or someone in your friend group would say, oh no, we're not going anywhere, we're just going to hang out at Ed's house. Sometimes we might end up at Ed's house, and because Ed's window
without Ed knowing that Ed.
And sometimes Ed's window, because it's facing the street, we might just end up around his window and just kind of peeking in to see what the guys are up to.
It's called stalker.
And
people go to jail for that.
You know what?
But
again, I can say thank God for change.
Okay, so let's be real, right? And add perspective to this. So this was 99, 2000 time frame. So there wasn't phones with GPS tracking and all that other stuff, right? So when you say coincidentally ending up to the same place,
air quotes.
Yeah, exactly, ending up in the same place that me and my friends are ending up at, right? There's a lot to be misunderstood because people may be thinking about it in this time frame. No, you had to do some research to find out where we were at because cell phones were really just kind of taking off, and it's not like we had cell phones at that time period. So you had to follow us or track us down.
Well, no, we didn't
or do something to find out where we were at.
Okay, let me tell you how we
wait.
Okay.
And that's the first portion of it. The second portion of it is it's one thing to coincidentally find, oh, y'all here and we here, but we didn't know y'all were there. So the fact that we didn't know y'all were in the same place that we were
at. It's just a minor detail.
That means
it's a minor
stalker.
detail.
No, it's called stalker.
So what we would do, just so you know, is if me and you are communicating, hey, what are y'all doing tonight? Oh, no, you guys are just hanging out the house. Oh, you're going to go grab something to eat? Oh, okay, that's cool. And then someone else in my friend group, i.e. my sister, one of our best friends, would call their guy counterpart in that same friend group and say, oh, where are you guys going to go eat tonight? Oh, yeah. So I got the first part of the information, which is you're not going to the movies. You're just going to hang out at the house. You're going to grab some food and come back to the house. And then person number 2 in my group would call person number 2 in your group and narrow it down to, oh, you're going to go get some chicken? Oh, from where? Oh, Miami Subs. And then person number 3 would check in with person number 3 and find out which location.
Okay,
so technically,
I hope everybody,
we could
whoever's
say
listening to this
it's
has
coincidental.
the same thought process. I hope whoever's listening to this has the understanding or the logic to say that is the definition of stalker.
No.
Like that is the definition.
That is the definition.
You were researching and doing things to find out where someone
it's all
is
about
at.
perspective.
Oh.
Love makes you do some crazy things.
Yes. It says a lot of people who say that end up being locked up. So I'm just saying. But anyway.
Anywho, we've digressed.
So actually, I want to kind of backtrack because there's a big gap with the last portion of what you were saying, right? So we did break up, right? So actually, let me take it from my first appointment. First appointment was 2003. So in 2003, I was already in a relationship. You, I think, were just about to get married, right? So you had your fiance or husband. I was in a long-term relationship, or by that point, I was in a long-term relationship. So we were completely separated. But the fact that me leaving, that reconnected us to be on good terms from my perspective. From 2003, from the time Trey was born to 2003, my perspective was we were not on good terms, and there was some good moments, but for the most part, we weren't on good terms, and we were just trying to figure ourselves out when it came to raising our son. From 2003 moving forward, that helped us reconnect as friends, co-parents. So again, different relationships. You had our daughter Cameron. Well, let me explain that. I say Cameron is our daughter because that's what I truly feel. However, I'm not her biological father, right? Obviously, her biological father was your ex-husband. So during that time frame, I do believe that I was going through a lot. And actually, it's funny. Actually, I can't say it's funny. It's interesting to hear that you were actually praying about, whatever you were feeling towards me. Because during that time frame, I did have emotion. I remember having every now and then, let's say several months will go by, 5 or 6 months. Let me be clear. So from 2003 to 2008, right? That time frame where we weren't together, just doing our own thing, co-parenting. Maybe once or twice a year, I remember having feelings and thoughts oh man, what would it be like if you and I got back together? Or, oh man, did I choose the right path, right? Because again, hindsight is 2020. However, I was in a long-term relationship, and because I was in a long-term relationship at that time, I was thinking about, okay, possibly getting married. But it was an option, but I wasn't sure. Like I always took marriage very, very seriously. And I'm like, if I'm gonna marry somebody, it's gonna be for the right reasons, but two, I'm gonna make sure this is someone that I can live the rest out of my life with. Mm-hmm. So even though marriage was kind of like a topic that may have came up once or twice during that relationship, and not trying to discredit or down that relationship, but my perspective during that time frame in my life, I viewed it as another fork in the road, right? Meaning, okay, should I go down this path and go down this path, which will eventually get me married, or should I not and go down this path, which may or may not include some type of rekindling of a relationship with you? Mm-hmm. I wasn't sure. And I wasn't trying to orchestrate anything at that time. It was just two things two possibilities in my mind. However, but throughout that time frame, I wasn't praying. I've always had, and I'm pretty sure you know this, I've always had a connection with God, but I wasn't my faith walk back then definitely isn't what it is now, right? So I believed in God, but I was very much into the world, and I was doing a lot of me. I was just doing a lot of me, right? Mm-hmm. And eventually, I'll be honest, due to right around like my second deployment, which was in 2005, right? I don't know. I was going through a lot of different things with what I wanted in life and different areas and exploring different things. So I ended up messing up that relationship. I know I messed it up. I'll take full responsibility over that. However, after that, or during that time frame, 2005 to 2008, and I keep saying 2008 because I believe that's kind of where we sort of, if I recall correctly, that's when we kind of sort of started reconnecting in the way of us, or towards the path of us where we're at now, mm-hmm. right? So between 2005, 2008, we weren't reconnecting as far as getting back together. It was just co-parenting, right?
Yeah, and we were becoming friends
lives.
again.
Yeah, we were becoming friends again and just living our separate lives. So during that, me reliving those separate lives, that long-term relationship ended. Could have been 2008, 2009. But that long-term relationship ended, and I was just kind of just doing me. I was like, you know what? I'm young. I'm just going to go do me, and I'm just experiencing the world. So, yeah, I had other relationships, but I had a lot of different options that I could choose life-wise, right? And when it came to career paths, there was a lot of different options that I had. And I was always cautious of, or should I say, I was less hesitant towards just randomly picking an option life-wise, because I had learned from the first time, and the first time meaning, what happened between me and you, because one thing I didn't realize at that time we were going through all that stuff was that all of the hurt and the damage that it caused, right? And it was very important to me to be a part of Trey's life. And I realized that there was a lot, because we weren't together and he was being raised in a separate household, I realized that I was missing a lot of his upbringing, and more so not mentorship, but the influence that I wanted to have on him, I realized I was missing that. So during that time frame when I'm just wilding out and just, I don't know, just doing
young, wild, and free,
if that's what you want to call it, I was also very hesitant towards really trying to pick what path I was going down. But it seems like you were praying through that time frame. I wasn't. So I just wanted to touch up on that, because that was something that I didn't know at the time frame. But fast forward to 2008-ish, 2009 time period. That's when we really started reconnecting towards where we're at today, or on the path that we're on today. And again, can't put a real timeline on it, because it's not like we said, okay, yeah, we're gonna start dating today. It was just, it kind of, actually how that transpired was you moved back to Florida.
Miami.
You moved back to Miami. Mm-hmm. because of what was going on within your relationship, and you ended up getting the divorce. So from that time period, you and I it started off as, okay, well, now for me, my thought process was, okay, great, my son's back closer to me, so I can spend a ton of more time with him, right? And then, with me being very intentional and trying to spend more time with him, that helped to develop a closer friendship between me and you, and just like, all right, like
because we're still being friendly and co-parenting.
We're still being friendly and co-parenting.
Platonically co-parenting is what we were doing.
There you go, platonically co-parenting. So that, just helped us just vibe better, and, things were going great. And then 2009, I get deployed again. So then while we were, before I got deployed to Iraq, that's when I was in California. We were doing some training, and I remember I was about to leave a few months later, and I wouldn't have a chance to come back to Florida. So I specifically asked to send, Trey was 8 at the time, right? Send Trey to me in California not a baby,
the
8
tender
years old.
age of 8.
8 years old, send Trey to me. And I guess thank God, because part of me was thinking, okay, she may or may not, because of her, helicopter mom. I was like, okay, will she do it? Will she not, send him on a plane by himself? Because that's what my expectation was. Like, I would have just paid for somebody to, guide him through the whole thing. But you were like, you could have easily said no. But your counter to that was, yeah, I don't want to send him on a plane by himself, so we're just going to come. So it was you, Cameron, and Trey that came out. So part of me was thinking, okay, you know what, boom. Me and Trey will do our own thing in California. You and Cameron will do your own thing.
Because I had a friend living there at the time, so that was the plan. I was going to hang out with my friend with Cameron while you and Trey did your thing. Yeah,
while me and Trey had father and son time. And I know that was a critical moment, because something that Trey said that day, and more importantly, it wasn't just what he said, it was the look and the emotions that he expressed. So me being me, I had planned out the whole time that Trey was going to come out. So I was like, all right, this day we're going to do this day we're going to do that, blah, blah, blah. So I remember picking him up that day. I was supposed to take him to the San Diego Zoo. Was it LA Zoo or San Diego Zoo?
San Diego Zoo.
San Diego Zoo. And I remember when I went to pick him up, you and Cameron were just trying to figure out what y'all were going to do that for that day. And I was like, well, if you want, y'all can come tag along with us. So you're like, all right, cool. So you decided to come. So we go to San Diego Zoo, and I remember, I don't remember how we were vibing at the time, but again, the most critical and pivotal thing that stuck with me and still sticks with me to this day is remembering Trey. Again, I don't know how you and I were vibing, if we were talking or whatever.
I remember what it was.
But I just remember it's the 4 of us, you, me, Cameron, and Trey. And I remember Trey looking so giddy, like he was just smiling the whole time. I mean, big old Kool-Aid smile. I mean, like from ear to ear. And I'm like, yo, what's wrong with this kid? Like, why is he acting this way? Because that's not how he normally acts. So he's 8 years old, and he's just, grin. And I remember him, he was on my right, and he looks up at me, and he's, again, has this big old smile. And I finally asked him, what? Like, what is it? And he said, this is the first time I see my mom and my dad together. And when he said that, it was just a dagger in the heart. It was like, ooh. I was like, whoa, come on, buddy, that's a low blow. Like, not in a bad way.
But it wasn't the first time he had seen us together. I think it was the first time he had seen us together like that.
That's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not the first time he's seen, okay, yeah, let me be clear. It's not the first time he's seen us together in the same room, right? Or, together, like, sitting next to each other. It was the first time him seeing us together, like, we were...
Like it was a family unit. That's that was the vibe. That's what I had remembered from that trip was it felt like we were a family unit.
Exactly.
And I think that's the feeling that he was trying to communicate. Yeah.
Well, that's exactly what that's when he said it, I knew exactly what he meant.
Mm-hmm.
So that's the way I took it. You know, him saying, looking up at me and him saying, you know, this is the first time I've seen my mom and my dad together. And it was weird because he didn't say, this is the first time I've seen you and mommy. He said, this is the first time I've seen my mom and my dad together. And I was like, whoa, like that really, really hit me heartstrings. I was like, okay. So literally from that point on, it got me thinking towards the path of, okay, yeah, maybe we can get things reconnected. So I got deployed, and then fast forward to now when you're talking about us emailing each other and stuff like that. So during that deployment, you know, we did communicate, and we did communicate way more. Like whatever friendship we had, it elevated during that time frame because I'm away and you just, you know, keeping me abreast. And then when I came back, again, it wasn't like I got down and be like, all right, man, I want you to be my girlfriend. You know, let's go ahead and do this. You know, let's go ahead and do the
It was not
thing.
that at all.
Like, come on, let's do again. And it wasn't, you know, me trying to sauce her up or anything like that, trying to, you know, shoot my shot or whatnot. It was just
seamless.
Yeah, it
it's
was
like
just seamless,
no time had
and-
passed between us.
yeah.
And I think the
it's kind of like,
communication,
yeah.
because at one point I remember thinking, or I remember realizing, I'm sending you emails almost every other day, because at that time what I wanted most, because you had the physical one-on-one time with Trey, you had real quality time with Trey, because at this point I've moved back to Miami. He was going to your house after school. So the quality time that you had missed out on while I was married, while you had been deployed, it was important to me for you to rekindle and really play out that role of a father that I knew you wanted to have in Trey's life. So when you deployed for the third time, because Trey had you almost every single day, you had him almost every single day.
Oh, yeah, nothing.
He was starting to play sports. He was like, you know, going in third grade. He's now having school fights and different, he's coming of age. And Edwin unfortunately had to deploy in that moment. So for me, it was like, I want to give you a play-by-play so that when you come home, there was no more of this, oh my gosh, what if you don't come home? It was when you come home, I don't want you to feel like you're having to relearn your son. I don't want you to feel like you are a stranger who's now being placed back into your son's life. So it was a routine. Even if it was midnight and I'm like halfway asleep, I wanted to send you, even if it was 2 sentences about Trey's day and our day, and including Cameron's part of her day, and just so that you felt connected and that you had something to look forward to when you came home. So yeah, and I still have those emails now, but definitely, like you said, the way that we were communicating had elevated from platonic parenting into something else.
One of the things you just rekindled another memory.
Look at us rekindling and reconnecting.
But this is something that was another pivotal moment. So that trip of you guys coming out to San Diego, to California, the 2 pivotal moments from that trip was, first, we just talked about Trey looking up at me and saying, oh man, this is the first time I see my mom and my dad together. But then the second one was when he was leaving. And he literally broke down. He broke down in the airport. He broke down at the airport, but not like boohoo crying, but he started crying. Like he started tearing up, because there's a difference. It wasn't like he was boohoo crying, but he was tearing up and he was very sober. He, you know, like his whole mood and demeanor changed. And that's the first time I saw that in him, because, you know, Trey, kind of like me, you know, he's very, you know, reserved emotionally. He knows how to keep his emotions under wrap. And when I saw that, I was trying to figure out what was wrong with him. And then, you know, he told me, I don't want you to go. I don't want you to go. And out of all my previous deployments, that's the first time he ever said that to me, right? And then that's the first time he's ever had that strong of a reaction, emotional reaction. So just that alone, again, helped to kind of tip, like that time frame of me of being hesitant of what path I wanted to take in life, and being hesitant and being like 1000% sure before I take a step. Trey helped to tip that over, because when I saw that reaction, I'm like, wow. So during that deployment and even coming back from that deployment, I started making decisions like, okay, I need to start putting myself in positions where I don't have to put Trey in that type of position. So I started making long-term decisions, not necessarily for what I wanted, but what was the best for him. And that led more towards, or should I say, as I started thinking about that path and what those decisions were, that kind of reconnected us. So basically for me, from my perspective, Trey was integral. Trey was an integral part of helping to reconnect our love. Not because from my perspective, I only reconnected with you because of him. It's, feelings were still there, and kind of like you, there were still unresolved emotions, right? But he helped to steer my direction towards you as far as in getting reconnected. So I think he played a pivotal role in helping me to say, okay, you know what? Yes, I'm going to make the decision to reconnect. So, like I was saying earlier, when I came back from that deployment, I started just reprioritizing. Reprioritizing my priorities. I don't know if that's redundant, but that's exactly the way I thought about it. And me coming back, we just spent more time with each other, hanging out, whatever I'm doing with Trey, you guys would come along, or you would come along, or Cameron would come along, and you wouldn't be there. And that just kind of like evolved. And we would go, I guess we went into that dating phase, or we went into dating, but it wasn't like I sat down and like, all right, man, I'd like to make you my girl, yay or nay, or wrote you a love letter, like, yo,
check the box, yes or no.
Yes or no. It wasn't like that. It just, I vividly remember someone asking us, oh, how long have y'all been dating? And we were like, I don't know. Like, we couldn't tell you when our anniversary, like to this day, we can't.
We can say our wedding anniversary.
Yeah, we can say our wedding anniversary.
But we don't have like a dating anniversary.
Because let's just say we started dating sometime in like 2010, 2011-ish, right? Like officially dating. Ish. Yeah, we got married in 2014. So from 2010, 2011-ish to 2014,
we were just together.
We were together, but I don't know our anniversary date. Like, we dated for those 4 or 5 years.
But more importantly than dating, it was a reconnection, but it was different now because it wasn't just us trying to figure out how to be polite and be pleasant while co-parenting Trey. At this point, Trey is 8 or 9 maybe. Cameron is 4 or 5. And we're doing things together. So it was much more than just we're operating as a unit. Yeah. And the message, or what the kids are seeing, is we are together because we're going to dinner, we're going to events, we're going to the park, we're going to play dodgeball and football games and all these different things. And when people would see us, they would just naturally assume that we were a family unit. And I think along that same path, I'm still praying because I know what I am feeling and continuing to feel for you in my heart. But then I think around that same time, we start talking about church. And because at this point, I think I'm still Catholic. I don't even know. But I remember us talking about finding a church where we both felt like we could get fed. And,
yeah, I remember that, yeah.
We went to our mutual friend who, our friend that we had in common, who was my neighbor and Edwin's best friend. We went to his church one time. We went to different churches, and someone had recommended, oh, have you ever checked out Trinity Church? And neither of us had. And, we had visited other churches, and it was like, well, I felt this and he felt that. And the kids would be with us, and they would feel one way or another. But I remember coming to Trinity Church, and the 4 of us were like, whoa, like we really, really enjoyed that. And so at that point in time, in addition to us just kind of going with the flow of, this reconnection and, with the kids involved and everything, we're also both on a spiritual journey.
That's
in terms of being saved and really taking God seriously. And I think that's when things really started to kind of just get deeper and really start to move forward with us in terms of from where we were to, we weren't really dating. We didn't have like a dating anniversary to, taking premarital courses and then eventually getting married. I think that element of looking for God and finding God and growing closer to God, and both of us having the same perspective about God. Even though we were very new in our faiths, we both knew that we wanted our children to be raised in a godly house. We both knew that we didn't want to just shack up. We knew there were things that we knew. There were standards. Eventually we did end up moving in together. But we knew that there were standards and morals and values that we both shared that we needed to pursue, and the way to accomplishing that was through God. And I think we both discovered that in Trinity Church. And I think once we found a church home where we were all four of us growing in, it helped us to learn and to grow and to really move things along the lines of what God wanted for us.
Yes, I can agree with that. I will take it a step back because I would be remiss if I didn't mention. So, like when you were saying how we both knew how we wanted to raise the kids, right? And that we were both pursuing God. One thing that I have to say that helped shaped my views and helped get me on the path to pursuing a stronger relationship with God is actually I got saved through a business, right? Because there were certain business ventures that I started at that time frame. Or should I say sometime, I actually started like 2006, 2007 time frame, but taking it seriously and, learning biblical principles and business principles through that business opportunity, it really made me want to pursue a stronger relationship with God. And I have to say, had it not been for that, I would not have been pursuing God the way I was pursuing God at that time frame. And I actually got initially saved at a business meeting. I went to a business conference, and at the end of the business conference on Sunday, they had a Sunday service. And what business conferences do have a Sunday service, during a business conference? And certain things that were said led me to view how I had been living my life for the previous 5 or 6 years and thinking, okay, yeah, I've been wilding out, and yeah, I need to reconnect with God, because that was something that I felt that I had separated for. So I guess a quick, what do we call it when you're watching a movie and they flashback, there you go. A quick flashback in my life is that, you were raised Catholic, but I was raised Seventh-day Adventist. So, me growing up from, infant all the way up to probably like teenagehood, I would go to church with my mom on Saturdays, respecting the Sabbath and all that good stuff. And in my teenage years, I became a rebel. By the time I was like 15 or 16, I was like, oh man, nah, like I started rebelling against a lot of different things. Not in a bad way, like I was out there trying to be, like all thugged out or anything like that, but just rebelling like, okay, I have a good understanding of my morals and my personal values, and I'm just gonna start doing things the way I wanted to do. So me going down that path it really started separating me from God, right? Because I'm just living in the world, doing secular things and stuff like that. And, being a teenager, right? You want to wild out, you want to, party with your friends, you just want to do you, and not thinking what's the deeper side effects or consequences of certain actions that you're taking. Or even if it's not actions that you're taking, inactions that you're taking, you know? So because I'm not, you know, living by certain principles that I knew morally was right or wrong, you know, there's consequences to that. So I would say, just like how we took a break in our relationship, right, from, let's just call it 2000 to 2008, I took a break with my relationship with God from, I mean, I can't even tell you what year it started. Well, you know what, I can pinpoint it to like probably about like really 2004-ish, 2004-ish, so about 2008-ish. I had like, I really just stopped caring about, is this morally right or wrong? And I'm like, man, I'm just gonna live my life, you know? And
that's funny, because that's when I ramped up. That's around when I ramped up my faith.
Okay, so while you were ramping up your faith,
I was
walking away from
a decline.
I was on a decline. And even honestly to this day, I still feel like my connection, I'm trying to regain the connection I had with God when I was younger. And how I can phrase that would be, like, I vividly remember even more or less in my high school days, but specifically in my elementary and middle school days, I remember having moral, like I remember having the Edwin with the halo on this shoulder and the Edwin with, you know, with the pitchfork on this and tail. And I vividly remember like certain things, like if I'm going to get into something, I vividly remember that conversation going on. And, you know, more often than not, I chose this Edwin, you know, one with the halo, but every now and then I would choose this one. And if I chose this one, you know, obviously there was consequences to that, and I would, you know, but I vividly remember that. And I vividly remember having a lot of just like, not necessarily having conversations with this one, like one-on-one conversations, but having this one tell me certain things. And I'd be like, okay, yeah, you know what? Yeah, that's right. I vividly remember that. Again, at a very young age. But during that time frame where I've, you know, that 2004 time frame to 2008 time frame where I started wilding out, I also remember, I'm not gonna get into the details, but there was something that I willfully chose to do, and I knew I should not do this. I knew going into it, I should not do this, but I was like, man, I just want to have some fun right now. Boom, let's just do it. So I willfully chose that path, and I vividly remember when I chose that path, this Edwin with the halo started going away. And for that 4-year time period, he kind of just went away altogether.